Are you planning to move to Portugal and looking for a perfect apartment? Well, look no further, because in this video I'm gonna share my experience with hunting for apartments in Portugal, in Lisbon in particular. But make sure to watch this video till the very end, because I'm gonna share my 10 tips and tricks on how to find the best apartment for you. The first question you might be asking, should I try to find an apartment myself, or should we get a real estate agent? Well, we tried both ways, and I'm gonna start with the real estate agency. We decided that we are new to the country, we don't speak the language, so we found an agent. And it was a disaster, to be honest with you. So basically there are two types of agencies that help with the apartments. The first type is when you send the list of apartments you want to visit, and then they help you with the scheduling. The second type would be typical real estate agents, where you call them and tell them what you need, the apartment size, the location, the budget. Typical. If you work with an agency, then you don't pay anything to the agent, because the landlord will pay some kind of commission once the apartment is rented out. So we worked with a kind of like popular agency, I'm not gonna call any names, but it was a very fun experience. So they tried to push their apartments, being like, these are the best, this is like what you asked for. I was like, no, wait. I have a list of apartments that I want to see. Can you please schedule the visits? They were like, yeah, of course, sure. So they said they called them. It's been weeks. They're like, yeah, we're trying to reach out, but it's like the holiday season, because it was in August, and it's kind of true, but not really. So again, they would like keep quiet for a week. And when we asked them, they'd be like, yeah, we tried to call them, they're not picking up, they're like not scheduling visits. So basically we had 3 apartment visits. All of them, I think one was from the agency, 2 of those were kind of like not from the agency, and that's it. And then they're like, we're working on the list, we're working. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna call myself. I called the whole list, I don't know, 10, 15 apartments. I scheduled all the visits the same day, all like the next day. And these people told me they cannot reach the landlords. I see what you're trying to do here, but I mean, why would you? I have a lot of questions. So with real estate agents, I feel like it's a hit and miss, because it can be an amazing agent. We have a friend who worked with an agent, and he was like, oh, he's like trying to help me. We're looking at a lot of apartments. In our case, it was just like weeks of silence and then pushing again like their properties. And I'm like, you know what? I just left the group. I'm like, I'm done. I'm gonna do it myself. So moving on to the DIY apartment hunting part. Let's start with some documents that you might need for your apartment. Once you find it, you're gonna be asked to provide your financial documents, such as IRS, taxes, your employment contract, bank statements if applicable. It depends on the landlord, company, person. So most likely they will ask you for some kind of financial proof that you're not like a scammer, that you're not like unemployed or something. We showed our tax returns, we showed our like contracts, everything we had. We just like sent it to the landlord. Second of all, ID, of course, your passport, some kind of other ID. As for the payment, they will ask you for the first and the last month, but they might also ask you for a deposit. And another interesting thing is called fiador, which is basically a guarantor, but again, it depends on the landlord, on your communication skills, because sometimes they'll be like, yeah, just send us like proof that you have money. We don't care about the guarantor, because some landlords would ask you to find a Portuguese person who's gonna like sign the letter saying like, yes, you have money, yes, like in case of an emergency or something, they're gonna pay for you, but like you're new to the country, where you're gonna find a Portuguese person to do that. So talk to the landlords, they might be okay without the fiador. After all the documents are checked, everything is good, you can sign the contract. Most of the contracts are signed either for a year or 3, but please bear in mind that short-term rentals, they're like super hard to find. When we came here, it was terrible. The prices were like ridiculous. So plan ahead and try to find a long-term contract. Again, it always depends on what you're looking for, because if you are okay living in a room with like 5 other people, then it's totally okay. If you're looking for a nice place to settle kind of thing, then it might take time, and it's gonna be a 3-year contract. Some of the platforms where you can look for apartments, first of all, Facebook Marketplace, I tell this in every video, Portugal, Canada, any other country, Facebook Marketplace, amazing. Second of all, groups on Facebook, expats in Portugal, Canadians in Portugal, digital nomads in Portugal, anything connected to like moving to Portugal, check those groups. Most likely they will have some kind of resources. Some people even post posts asking for help, saying, hey, we're looking for like a 2-bedroom apartment. Anyone knows anyone? Or like, can you lead us to someone else? But also there are 2 websites. First of all is Idealista or Idealista in Portuguese. Second one is Casa Sapo. I will leave all the links in the description box down below so you can, do your research, check the apartments that are available on the market. I would say check those websites frequently because sometimes I would look through the list, there's nothing, I renew the page, literally like 5 new listings appear. So if you are in a serious apartment hunt, set those notifications and then just, check the properties, call the properties and go see them. And now to my experience. So we were looking for a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment, renovated, because we come from Canada. It's like a super different level, I guess, of lifestyle, of like apartments in general, because here all the places are like tiny, old. We were looking for something modern, let's call it this word. So renovated, nothing too fancy, just like a nice, spacious apartment. We tried to work with the agency, failed. I tried to schedule visits. We checked some apartments, but it's very interesting because people would post pictures. They would take them like on a wide angle lens. And then when you come see those apartments, they're literally like very tiny. You cannot even live there. I'm like, excuse me, where is the office? They're like, oh, this is the office. I'm like, no, this is a walk-in closet. They're like, no, this is an office. You can put like a sofa and your guests can stay here. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. We're also asking people we know, our friends, because some of our friends back from Canada, they were like, oh, I have a friend like in Lisbon, ask them if they have any contacts or like people or whatsoever. Failed until my friend connected us with her friend, and her friend was renting out their apartment because they were moving. So we connected with the landlady. Fast forward, she's like, oh, I have the same apartment that you guys are looking at right now, but a few floors higher. And I was like, take my money, sign the lease, like we're staying here. Because after almost a month of looking for apartments that were like tiny, old, noisy, smelly, moldy. Mold is it's like a next level thing here, because some apartments would come, they like look perfectly, and then you go to the bedroom, which is kind of like dark, and you're like, okay, and then you just like smell this mold and you see the black walls and you like, people gonna live here? Like, what's going on? So we basically found our apartment through friends of a friends of a friends. So if you're looking for an apartment, it won't hurt to ask people, maybe they have some leads for you. If you like what you've seen, please consider subscribing to this channel and giving this video a thumbs up, because it really helps with the algorithm and it shows this video to other users. I almost forgot to mention one thing. There is a huge misconception that Lisbon is cheap. Portugal might be in some cities, Lisbon is not cheap. So if you went to Lisbon 5 years ago, 7 years ago, please don't message me saying Lisbon is so cheap, oh wow, that's so cool, because that's not the case anymore. The prices skyrocketed like through the roof. Even within the past year, the prices went crazy. So when we came to Portugal, the budget was like 800 to 1000, because people were like, oh, for that amount of money, you can find like a perfect apartment, you're gonna have like an office with like a guest bedroom, blah, blah, blah. Oh no, that's not the case now. 1500 for like a 2-bedroom at least if you're planning to live in Lisbon. If you're planning to live outside of Lisbon, then the prices might be lower. Please bear in mind that too. I think if you're coming from Canada or the US, UK, and you want to maintain the same level of housing that you had in your country, that's not gonna be cheap. I like 100%. But if you're okay with living in older, maybe not renovated places, yeah, that's gonna be cheaper. But also if you're coming from California, where the rent is like literally 5K, 6K, I don't even know, a lot of money, then yes, Portugal and even Lisbon gonna be cheap for you. And here are some tips and tricks on how to find an apartment in Portugal. First of all, be persistent. If you called 5 times and nobody replied, call the 6th time, the 7th time. Sometimes people are just on vacation and they do not take their phones with them or something like that. Because I had cases where I would call and I'm like, you know, whatever. And then I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna call one more time, and then a person picks up and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I was so busy. I had like apartment visas, stuff like that. So be persistent. The second thing is negotiate, but within the limits. A lot of landlords would prefer working with you directly rather than working with agencies and like real estate agents, because nobody wants to share their money, right? So landlords would rather just rent an apartment to you and not pay any commission to these people, like the third party people. So if the apartment is 1,500, try saying, hey, how about 1,400, 1,300? Of course, it will not make sense if the apartment was 1,500 and then you're like, how about 1K? But we had a case like that because the apartment was like a bit interesting, I would say. First of all, the location was literally like on the hill. Second of all, it was the first floor and the neighborhood was not super nice. So they dropped the price, I think, for 400 euros. I mean, this happens, but it's something to think about. Tip number 3 would be check hood maps. You can get an idea of what's going on in the city because hood maps literally tells you everything you need to know. Rich foreigners, old people, party people, IT folks, sporty people. So you can take a look and see what's going on. If you found an area that you like, you can go to YouTube and then like check what people are saying, so you can kind of like, you know, confirm what you saw on hood maps. And speaking of research, don't forget to research the area, because if you have any kind of knee problems like Miss Yulia has, oh my friend, you're gonna be crying like Miss Yulia. Crying every night. Because Lisbon is very hilly, and if let's say you're like, oh, I'm gonna live in Graça because like all these rooftops and the views, blah blah blah. Well, I have bad news for you, because Graça is literally like this all the time and your knees gonna be like so do your research, ask people, talk to people, and see for yourself. If you have time to come visit, look at the area, like explore, and then you can make your decision. And speaking of visiting, I think it's nice to come and explore the areas, to spend some time in different neighborhoods, to see what you actually like, what you don't like. Because looking for apartments, especially remotely, it's not a good experience, because again, pictures might be different, something else might be different, but also the apartment may be perfect, but the area, terrible. So if you have this opportunity, come, stay, let's say in this area 3 days, this area 3 days, or maybe like a week. If you're working remotely or something like that, come spend a week in this area or in this area. This way it will be easier for you to decide where to stay long term. If you are sensitive to noise, make sure to live far from the flying zone, because airplanes, they are super loud. People who say you can get used to the noise, well, I'm sorry, it's been a year and I cannot, because like they're super loud. Even in my videos, if you hear something like that's probably an airplane flying. This is what I'm talking about. So if you're super sensitive, you cannot sleep or whatsoever, try picking a quiet area, quiet neighborhood. Do your research where like the planes are literally flying, so you don't end up in the middle of the night being like, oh, I hate this place, I can't sleep because of the airplanes. Do not sign contracts unless you are 100% sure in that apartment. Because as I've mentioned before, people would take pictures with a wide angle lens saying, oh, there's a lot of space, and there's literally no space in this apartment, unless your friend went to that apartment, looked with their eyes and said, yes, it is a good apartment, you can rent it. Then you can sign a contract. But also don't forget to do it with DocuSign or some kind of other software. This way you both parties gonna be protected. Another interesting thing to know when renting an apartment is that kitchens in most of the apartments are closed, so you will not find an open space. there might be like a open living room, but then there's gonna be a wall separating living room from the kitchen. We have an open space kitchen. It's a mess, but I'm gonna put some pictures up in here so you can see that we have an open space kitchen. This was honestly one of my requirements because I hate cooking without people. So when we host parties or like friends come over, I'd prefer seeing my friends and like cooking or like making snacks or like pouring wine, because I don't want to be lonely in the kitchen. It's not fun. I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you go further from Lisbon, the rent's gonna be cheaper. I've mentioned that before, I'm gonna tell it one more time so people don't come at me and be like, you can go further, you can go further. Some people prefer to live in bigger cities, in capital cities, where you have access to everything, like parties, restaurants, stuff like that. But if you go somewhere, even to like maybe Cascais, Sintra, maybe like Marfa or any other smaller city, you might find cheaper apartments. If you're coming from the US or Canada, please be ready, because the appliances in Europe, in Portugal, are like Barbie size. Honestly, if something happens to my duvet, for example, my cat pukes, I'll need to go to the laundromat because my washing machine, it's not gonna fit my duvet. If I need to wash my sheets, my washer will only fit one sheet and 2 pillowcases, and there's no dryer. So I prepared you for the life in Portugal. Also, like the dishwasher, it's okay. Microwave, it's okay. The fridge. So if you have like a 2-door fridge in your American household, well, here they're gonna be tiny, and you'll need to basically go grocery shopping every now and then because you won't have any space to store your frozen produce. I'm saying that because I was that type of person who would be buying stuff for the next week, just freeze it and then like, you know, cook. All good. Here, I'm literally planning my week. I'm like, okay, I'm going shopping Monday and then like Thursday, so I have space in my fridge to store all the food I bought. And another thing to know about renting apartments in Portugal and Lisbon, most of the apartments are unfurnished. You can find some furnished options, but they're gonna be more expensive. Well, of course. And they're not that much on the market, to be honest. First of all, we were looking for furnished apartments, but then we realized we have a cat who's gonna destroy everything. So we decided to just rent an unfurnished apartment and buy all the furniture. And I think this is pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions about renting apartments, hunting for apartments, anything connected with apartments in Lisbon, in Portugal, the comment section is yours, and I'll see you next week. Bye!